Well, drone strikes in Syria from British forces now after jihadis were suspected of plotting an attack on the Queen and the rest of the royal family. Britain's Prime Minister defending his country's actions and the UK's Defence Secretary warning more strikes are possible if threats continue. Now joined by Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps and a Fox News military analyst. Lieutenant Cowan, what do you think of the Brits' move and the reason why they decided to now get involved?
Well, I love it, Jenna. You got to hand it to the Brits. I think the message to all jihadis is don't mess with the Queen. Don't threaten her. And you have to look and wonder if this is really part of a program they're going to get going. We know Jihad Johnny is out there. A number of Brits have gone over to join ISIS. I think the Brits are going to get more engaged. The Parliament has restricted the kind of engagement that British forces can have against ISIS, in Syria, that is. But I think we're going to see more action. But Jenna, the other interesting thing about this story is the nature of the intelligence. This was very precise intelligence. These two guys and one other traveling in a car in Raqqa. You can imagine how difficult it is to come up with that kind of intelligence. And the question is, who did it? Was it British intelligence, in which case we hope they're sharing with us, or was it U.S. intelligence? In which case you wonder why we passed it to them to do the strike.
So who do you think has that intelligence? Because that is one of the criticisms or one of the obstacles that we've talked about over the last several years when it comes to Syria. Having the appropriate intelligence to strike the people that you want to strike with the tools that you have.
Yeah, you know what? We've had about a year to be working this inside Syria, and we're, the collection of signals intelligence, telephonic communications, human intelligence, assets on the ground, imagery intelligence, watching these things. Frankly, in the course of a year, I think we, the United States, and perhaps in direct conjunction with our British partners, have done a very good job. We've done a number of drone strikes. We've taken out a number of senior targets. Remember, the Israelis have done this for years. But they've had decades to put those systems and those programs together.
Sure.
I think our intel guys are doing a good job. And that strike sends a message to all the rest of the Brits running around over there affiliated with ISIS, and in fact, all of ISIS's leadership.
I have some questions about our strategy as well, but just to finish up with the Brits, how do you think the refugee crisis in Europe is playing into the calculation to become more aggressive? Do you think that's a factor?
I think it has to be, and I know there's a lot of talk about maybe ISIS is sending refugees up, sending people, their own people up with the refugees. I'm not as keen on that as I am to say that many of those refugees are going to get up there in these other countries they're moving to, and their expectations of a better life are going to be real hard to find. It's no jobs, no housing, no places, and at that point they have the opportunity, those people, of becoming radicalized. So the whole refugee thing is a very big issue, and letting the refugees, those fleeing Syria, see what we're able to do, we the Brits, or other allies are able to do down there, sends a message to all of them.
If you take care of ISIS, though, you in part may take care of the refugee problem because the refugees are fleeing ISIS. So let's get back to our plan to combat ISIS. According to an article in the New York Times, the Pentagon is drawing up plans to revamp its training program. We've talked about the few dozen fighters that we've trained that then were kidnapped inside Syria. But this is how it's being described. They're going to revamp the program by dropping larger numbers of fighters into safer zones, as well as providing better intelligence, improving their combat skills. Should we continue down this route, Colonel Cowan? Is this going to bear the fruit that we hope?
Jenna, this is so embarrassing. You know, it was June of last year that the White House announced $500 million. That's $500 million to train, equip, recruit, what have you, 5,000 Syrians to go against Assad. And in the meantime, now we've pushed Assad aside and says, okay, we're going to go against ISIS. Let me just say this. Can you imagine where ISIS would be right now if that $500 million had been dedicated to the Kurds, the Iraqi Kurds and the Syrian Kurds, the only ones who are carrying on in a very effective battle against ISIS? Had they gotten that money, had we put the programs together with them, ISIS would certainly not be in the position it's in today, in my judgment.
Oh, it's interesting. We'll see what happens and what the impact of the Brits' quote-unquote success here has on the broader strategy to defeat ISIS for all of us. Colonel Cowan, great to see you as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.